So it's becoming this bring your own energy approach. They're tasked with doing things like building their own, almost like a mini utility, their own mini power plants, their own mini grids, so that they can supply their own power to that to their own data centers.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Brendan Cavanaugh. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at Defiance Investments. Brendan, very good to speak with you. Everybody's talking about AI software, but you argue the real story is the infrastructure behind it. Why do you see this as a generational investment opportunity?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So, look, it's really easy to focus on the sexy parts of the AI build out and the front end user interface. But if you take a step back, it's like what is needed to enable that? And it's a lot of the infrastructure. It's the data centers. What we're seeing is the largest physical build out in decades that is facilitating this AI revolution. So global data center capex projected to be about $7 trillion by 2030. $3 trillion of that alone is spent on AI infrastructure in the US. This year, for example, the four hyperscalers are spending about $600 billion on CapEx. Most of that is going to infrastructure itself. So when you take a step back and think about all of the money that's going into this build out, it's all really being spent on infrastructure, data centers, chip fabs, grid modernization, power production, all of those things that are needed to enable AI to work. Um, it's creating a lot of opportunities for companies outside of just technology. It's also reshaping local economies, creating tons of jobs in things like construction and engineering, energy companies, with utilities, any sort of kind of equipment that goes into that build out. So I think it's really important for people to realize what goes into keeping AI turned on, and that's the infrastructure.
Well, power has become one of the biggest constraints on AI growth, Brendan. Why is electricity now the critical bottleneck? And where do you see the biggest opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, so most data center build outs, when you're talking to those developers, they are citing power generation and the power supply and the grid itself as one of the biggest constraints. So it's not compute, it's not chips. It is really the sheer demand for power that's creating this entire bottleneck in the AI space. Um, any company can have the most advanced models, the best chips, the best interface, the best marketing. Regardless of that, if they can't turn on and keep their AI, keep all of that technology, all of that compute turned on, and distributed broadly, it's completely futile. So obviously, every day we're all using a lot more electricity than ever in terms of devices, electric vehicles, our computers. But couple that with the sheer demand for energy from the AI revolution and the AI build out, and we're seeing conservative projections show that over the next decade or so, energy usage will double. Basically, each day we're seeing those projections increase. So right now, I think data centers are using about 2% of global electricity capacity. More and more data centers are being built. We're all using AI more and more. Conservatively, it's looking like it's going to double. I wouldn't be surprised if that would, um, maybe triple in that decade or so. And so power is a huge constraint. We have outdated grids needed to supply that power. And so there's a lot of opportunity in terms of supplying power to the AI space, whether that be from updating grids and supporting those data centers directly, or from them bringing their own energy, them building their own power supplies. Think about decentralized energy companies, nuclear, fuel cells, all of that. There is this bottleneck that we've identified, and now there are a lot of people and a lot of companies looking at how to fix that bottleneck, how to address it so that, again, we can keep the AI revolution going and AI turned on.
You mentioned bring your own energy for data centers. What does this mean and why is it becoming so important?
Yeah, so I like to point this out as one of the few situations where regulatory friction is actually creating a big opportunity. So as AI demand outpaces grid expansion, and you're seeing these data centers use a ton of power, regulators and utilities are basically coming in and saying, hey, data center, you can't um, come into a local grid, overload the power supply, drive up the cost for everyday consumers. You have to figure this out on your own. And so if that's regulatory friction, there's a problem. And obviously, these companies are going to solve it. So it's becoming this bring your own energy approach. They're tasked with doing things like building their own, almost like a mini utility, their own mini power plants, their own mini grids, so that they can supply their own power to their own data centers. Think about things like if I'm building something on campus, I'm going to be looking again at nuclear, maybe clean, any sort of clean energy, fuel cells, industrial batteries, anything like that. And it's really actually helping. At first, it was probably a little bit of a nuisance, but now when you think that energy is going to be consumed where it's made a lot quicker, it's actually helping with more efficient data center build out. It's helping projects be completed faster because of things like permits and capacity from the grids that aren't necessarily a problem anymore. So it started out as potentially started out as an annoyance, becomes a big opportunity. Then it's obviously creating cottage industries around some of the things like the actual equipment themselves, the um, the generators, small modular reactors, all of that. So BYOE is really a boon for a lot of companies in this space.
Brendan, rather than picking the AI winners, you favor a pick, stand, shovel approach. Why do you think that's the smarter way to invest in the AI boom?
Yeah, I mean, I love the picks and shovels analogy when you talk about kind of the gold rush. It was the people selling the tools, the picks and shovels that were making more money and more consistent money than the gold miners themselves. And again, that's not necessarily a sexy thing to do, but that is what's necessary. And so when you take a step back from the AI build out and you look at who's supporting it, who's creating the infrastructure, one of the things that's creating great opportunity is that the AI infrastructure providers can be completely agnostic as to whomever's winning that AI race. Doesn't matter whose model is better. Doesn't matter whose distribution powers are better. Basically, in order to fuel AI and to fuel that build out and the revolution itself, they need the infrastructure itself. Every dollar I'm sorry, every dollar that's going to build out a data center is going to flow through all the infrastructure companies. So if there were an actual pullback in terms of AI adoption or even the AI build out itself, all of these companies are going to be very resilient to that, right? The data centers are already being built, or they're already built, or the contracts are already signed. Those data centers are going to be continuously maintained and upgraded throughout time, regardless of whether or not it's Alphabet or Meta or Amazon actually winning the race. So taking that step back, looking at picks and shovels, um, all of the hyperscalers, everyone building out AI capabilities need the infrastructure, need the picks and shovels. Um, they need the power producers, they need the grid equipment, they need the turbines, they need the wires, the chips, the semis, all of that. And so I like that creates a much broader opportunity, more agnostic to whomever the actual winners are.
Well, it sounds like a fascinating space with lots of picks and shovels to choose from. Brendan, thank you very much for your insights.
Yeah, Stephen, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Brendan Cavanaugh, he's the Chief Strategy Officer at Defiance Investments.